After the success of Persona 5, it was tough to see how it would be topped, but Persona 5 Royal came along and brought an unforgettable experience in the JRPG genre. Here is my review on Persona 5 Royal. The original came out in 2017 and it was very successful. It won awards for being the best RPG and was regarded as a great game in general. It took the Persona series to a big level with its art style and improved gameplay. After this though, the question came about, how will the enhanced/definitive version be? Because in the past we got Persona 3 FES, which is the improved version of Persona 3, then Persona 4 Golden, which follows the same format as Original 4. So when Royal got announced, I personally was very excited, because I loved Persona 3 FES and 4 Golden. With Royal, I was anticipating it a lot, and it's safe to say that it didn't disappoint at all. There is a reason why this was my most anticipated game of 2020 after all. The type of game is just like the others in the series where it is a JRPG, aka Japanese role-playing game where it's turn-based. Kinda reminds me of the old Final Fantasies to a degree. But the turn-based stuff is of course on the combat side of things. The other side of gameplay is the day-to-day stuff like raising stats and building relationships with your confidants. There is an element of time management as well, though this we will get into more later. Now on to the story of Persona 5 Royal, where you start off fast-paced in what seems to be a casino and trying to escape from enemies. This doesn't work and you get captured. You wake up from some brutal interrogation and end up having to tell the story of what led to the arrest. We travel back to April 9th. You end up meeting Sojiro Sakurai, who takes you in for the next year, and the next day, he takes you to the school you will be attending known as Shujin Academy. You also get to meet your teacher Kawakami and the principal. The next day arrives, and this is where some strange stuff goes down. You meet up with the second year named Ryuji, and you end up in what's called the Metaverse, where your school turns into a castle. Then after punching and hearing some anime groans, you awaken to your persona Arsene. This, by the way, is a great scene, and they really nailed the awakenings in this game in general. You escape the castle along with meeting a new party member known as Morgana. This is essentially a setup for the story, and the best part is, it has nice pacing. Sure, when you go to the school for the first time it does slow down, but going to the castle almost right away gets you back into it. I could mention more, but I will say this regarding the story. Royal adds a third semester, and the stuff that was added is great. It actually did better than my expectations, so that's big, and the stuff that got improved on from original helps out as well. One of my favorite things is actually somewhat of a subtle thing, where in Royal, you get to see party members interact with each other even when the main character is not there. This is good to see, as it even helps in certain parts of the game, plus it leads to a certain gameplay element which I will mention later. Something I was concerned with beforehand was how Kasumi was going to be handled, and well, without saying much cause spoilers, she is integrated well and the entirety of the third semester was handled great. It also helps that the writing is almost perfect throughout, so that's a bonus. I really enjoy the villains who in this game, the main objective is to monitor their activities, and when the time is right, you steal their hearts, which makes them confess all the wrongdoing that they have done. It gets pretty extreme with the villains, as some have done some real bad stuff, so the fan thieves gotta do what they do best, and that is stealing hearts. I think it's safe to say Persona 5 Royal story hit the mark great. It does take many hours to get through, but the overall content of its story is well worth the time. Something which is good as well is the characters. A big part of these games is the characters, because if you don't like them, it's very difficult to continue playing it, but I think one of the big strengths of Persona 5 is that most of the characters are good/great. And me personally, I adore this main cast. In fact, I would say this game has the least amount of characters I am not into, and the few that I am not into are actually a few confidants who aren't even in the team, and we will talk more about confidants in general soon. On to the setting of the game, which is of course in Japan. In Persona 5, you are mainly in Tokyo, and you get to go around places like Shibuya, Yongen, and others. The best part of going to these areas is that they look distinct, but more importantly, they are not too tough to navigate through, and you get to see many things like food places, shops, and even places to play games like darts. Speaking of darts, the new city that got added, Kichijoji, is a good addition as it's another place to explore and check things out. It's also another place where you can go to the Velvet Room just in case you need a certain persona or two. What also helps is going from place to place is a fast process, as the travel system in the game is easy, using the map and picking the location you want to go to. The environments in general are nice, as it really does feel like you are in Japan, plus throughout the game you get to go see other locations like Hawaii and more. Now let's get into the gameplay, where we got a lot to mention. We have two sides of the gameplay, one being the palace/fighting stuff, and the other being the confidants. Let's start off with the confidants. In Persona 5, you get to make relationships with your teammates and random people you meet, like a politician, a cool goth doctor, and even a kid with a Get Smoked hat. Yes, this is actually a thing. Regardless of how silly it may be, it's very important to get as many as you can done, as this helps with making personas for battling. Whenever you rank up with a confidant, you get more experience gained when fusing a persona of that arcana. And when you max out a confidant, you can fuse a very strong persona from said arcana. Usually these ones are considered the best in the game. Another big thing that's worth noting in this is the fact that most of the time when you rank up a confidant, you get an ability which helps out in either palace stuff or just basic quality of life stuff. When doing confidants with teammates, this is even better as most abilities are for battles in the game, which makes sense because you will be around them the most. Teammates also have great abilities like follow-up attacks, getting rid of status ailments, taking mortal hits, and etc. The confidants themselves have a bit to them. For some of them, you have to get a stat requirement, more on stats later, and when you have it, you can start them. Throughout, you will get some answers which you can choose from, and depending on your choice, you can get extra points which increase the confidant faster. The only reason why this is notable is because technically you are on a time limit as the game is just a year. If you aren't going for 100% in confidants, then this doesn't matter that much. But it is nice to try and get as many as you can. Some are better than the others when it comes to abilities, like Star being one where you can switch party members while in battle, and this... why was this not in previous games? It's very good. In Royal, some confidants have actually been improved on, like Devil and Strength. They either got new abilities or you learn abilities quicker than the original. This is a nice quality of life change as you can get them faster and see what new ones you can get as well. It also helps that whenever you go through your confidants in the menu, it lets you see what rank in abilities with ease. Now, picking the right choices and having the right personas is great, but there's one other element. That element being the social stats. These are important as certain things are locked out if you don't have a certain stat at the required threshold. How do you get the stats at the threshold? Well, there are many activities you can do. There is a good amount of them to do at daytime or nighttime, and most of them require yen, so that's a thing to remember. You can only do one in the afternoon and one in the evening. The activities themselves are varied as some increase some stats while others increase other stats. An example is studying while getting weird looks from others increases knowledge, whereas going to the bathhouse to hang out with the lads increases charm. These things you have to do many times if you want to max out the stats, because going to it once won't do it. Good news is the stats increase a bit faster in this game compared to the previous ones. Nice quality of life note, by the way, is when you get a stat increase, if the notes are sparkling, that means it ranks up. So as much as it can be tough getting stat increases, it'll be very much worth it as you can do new things. Side note to mention, when you do New Game Plus, a lot of this carries over, so that helps when doing confidants there. Moving on, we have the palaces themselves, and this might be one of the biggest changes. Beforehand, you had randomly generated floors where you had to find the stairs in order to move to the next one. Here, it's completely different, where palaces have gimmicks and a definitive start and finish. You essentially have to collect the treasure in order to change the bad guy's heart. The path getting there is the same, yes, but there are obstacles along the way which you have to go through when getting there. Some of these can be easy, like defeating a mini-boss or doing a complex puzzle. Heck, even using the grappling hook is something as well. Most of the palaces are the same from vanilla, but the additions here are much appreciated. First, we have the grappling hook, where you can use it to find new ways to advance the palace, or find the will seeds, which is another new addition. A bonus with the grappling hook is being able to ambush enemies from behind without getting real close to them. This ability is something you get from doing one of the confidants, so this sadly isn't available from the start. I mentioned the will seeds earlier, and this is another new thing in the palaces. These seeds are side items that you can get, and whenever you get them, you regain SP, which help out when going through the palaces in as few days as possible. The other main purpose is when you collect all three, you get an item for doing it, which you can give to one of the new characters, Jose, so you can get an accessory. Those are the new additions to the palaces in Royal, and like before, having a definitive endpoint makes exploring these places better than going through randomized floors like in Tartarus or the Persona 4 dungeons. Though saying this, there is something like that in this game known as Mementos. Alongside the palaces, we have Mementos, which is a randomly generated floor dungeon. This one, while having the same structure as the before mentioned Tartarus and others, it tries to go out of its way to change things up while having the similar format. When going through Mementos, the main objective is to keep going down until you cannot anymore. Mementos is based on story progression, so don't expect to go through all of it on one go. The main gimmick is the fact that it is known as everyone's palace, whatever that means. It's an area where you can do requests that help out people in a smaller scale compared to palaces. You get these requests also whenever advancing the main plot or doing some confidants. It's usually best to try and do a bunch at once in order to get as many days as you can, but this can be very subjective as routing in this game can be varied. Originally, Mementos received criticism for not being that great to go through. Hearing the same music, not fighting super awesome fights, or just not having the motivation to go through it are some of the many reasons why it got criticism. In Royal, it's much better. Here you get random events like not being able to see well, more enemies, or other changes in floors which help out when it comes to variety. Another big change to the Mementos is the addition of Jose. He is here on certain floors, and when you go to him, you can get various items like somas, beads, and other real good stuff. However, you don't use yen when buying them. You instead pick up flowers in the floors and use them. It might sound strange at first, but you get a ton of them as you go through, so there is no need to worry on that front. If you leave, however, then you lose the amount you currently have, and it's reset the next time you go to Mementos. Another thing that Jose does is changing the cognition of Mementos itself. He can do stuff like increasing experience gained or even get more yen when fighting. The way you do this is by collecting the stamps that are laid out in the sections of Mementos. It tells you how many are in each section, so at least there is that. One last thing to note in this area, the Reaper trick in Mementos doesn't work anymore for experience grind. Instead, there is another way of getting experience which in my opinion is better. There's an ability that you get with Ryuji's Confidant and essentially skips fights but still gives you experience. This means no SP was used, so you don't have to worry about conserving it. If you take a little bit of time to just go around and do this, you will have no problem with gaining levels in this game. Now let's get into the battles, and oh boy do we have a lot to talk about here. Starting up before you even fight, there is a way to get a head start on enemies where you can ambush them from behind. When you pull this off, you get a slight head start on the turn order, and it gives you the opportunity to end fights before they even get a turn. The fights themselves are mainly just defeat all enemies and you win, but there's a ton of depth to the fights. You take on demons and each one have different strengths and weaknesses, so if you want to end fights quickly, you have to find the weakness, knock down all enemies, and then do an all-out attack for big damage to win. Funny thing with finding the weakness, if you fuse that demon before fighting it for the first time, you can get a massive head start on it, so that's a thing that you can do. There are a ton of elements in this game, the most in a while actually. We have two forms of physical attacks, normal hits and gun hits. Gun attacks are great as you can use up all your ammo in a fight and it instantly gets refilled afterwards. It's pretty great at the beginning of the game, but as it goes on, it balances out fairly. Those are the physical attacks, so let's move on to the magic, and oh man, do we have a lot more magic stuff here. There are a ton of elements here like fire, ice, lightning, wind, yes, even the insta-death ones are here like Bless and Curse. A nice bonus is the fact that they added in damage skills with Bless and Curse, so if you're not a fan of insta-kills or RNG is not going your way, you can use these instead. We also get to see psychokinetic and nuclear elements, and having these two also helps out. It's great as some demons can have multiple weaknesses with these elements. There was a worry that having this many would make things difficult like party setups or what persona to carry, but amazingly this is not an issue at all. Granted, you will have to try your hand with fusions, more on that later, but the more fusions you do, the more likely it is you can get a persona with multiple spells, so you don't have to worry about switching every 2 seconds. Speaking of switching, they make it convenient if you want to switch to another persona in this game. You just hit a button, then see which one you want to use, and it's easy as that. And to make it even better, this game subtly added something which I'm not sure most have noticed. In earlier games when you switched a persona, if you did it by accident, you couldn't switch back. Here they fixed it and made it so the only time you cannot switch out is if you downed an opponent after switching once in battle. Nice thing they added there. With the spells, they do grow stronger as you progress in the game, and you feel it when you get to that point. Even the support skills, which are good by the way, get better even in small ways. An example is Turakaja, which increases attack for one person. Later on you get Mata Turakaja, which increases attack for all party members. And do I even need to comment on how good Mind/Power Charge is? The answer is very, very good, and I would recommend using these skills. Other mechanics in battle are Baton Pass, where you down an enemy, then you give your turn to another party member. This gives them an attack boost. If you down another enemy, you can pass the baton again. And you get other good stuff like HP and SP Restore. Heck, getting the last boost is amazing because you don't use SP or HP for that attack, so it's a win-win if you can use it. Something new for the battles are the Showtime attacks. As Devil May Cry as it sounds, these are crazy moves that do a ton of damage. Each party member gets 2 Showtime animations and they happen semi-randomly, although it pops up a little more when the enemy is almost gone or if you take a big hit, almost like a comeback of sorts. These animations, by the way, are amazing. They are silly enough while also being really cool to look at. The damage they deal is great and it remains good throughout the whole game. And if you really feel like doing some big damage on enemies, almighty damage is also an option. Those are a bunch of ways of doing damage on enemies. Other things you can do during turns are using items for whichever use you need them for. You can guard, which this is very important as some enemy attacks are real tough hitting, especially when they charge up. If you find weak enemies or you want to take your chances, you can rush, which is everyone using normal attacks, so that's an option. When you knock down an enemy, you can just do an all-out attack or you can negotiate with them. You can get items, yen, or just recruit them into your group. These can be tough, so if you are concerned that you won't get the persona, you can just all-out attack. Or you can get an item or just simply yen. One big new thing is sometimes you can come across enemies that have a strange electric aura on them. If you take them out first and quickly, the battle can end very fast as they will do a ton of damage to the other enemies. Boss fights in this game are kind of like normal fights but with gimmicks and higher HP. All these fights have a little prompt, which is very important. You should always be doing this as it's required to win the fight. It's also fair, so if you somehow miss it, it comes back very quickly. There are more fighting mechanics, but those are unlocked as you get higher in Confidants. It's safe to say that those are very good, and getting them makes battles even better. The battles are important, but a big part of them are the personas you summon, and a great way of getting them is by using fusion. Persona fusions have played a big role, and here it's no different, as it's important if you want to beat the game easier. Fusions work where you take one persona and fuse it with another, or you can do advanced fusions where it's 3 or more. There is a fusion calculator where it will tell you which arcanas fuse into what, but generally the goal is to always have good personas around your current level. Having ones around your level will help with balancing, as taking on demons will be fair in fighting them. If you ever have a persona who's about to learn an awesome skill but you don't feel like leveling them up the normal way, you can do Strengthen Persona, which lets you sacrifice one to increase the level of the one you want in order to get the skill. This may not be used a lot, but it's nice having a feature like this here. There is the itemized persona where you can get items like weapons or even skill cards which you can use on other personas. The skill cards, however, only work if you have the blank cards, and the other items need their own item as well in order for it to work. Personally, I am one for the skill cards, and I don't really mind not using the other items. We also have Lockdown, where your persona can learn a new skill, plus you can increase some attributes, though you will have to leave the persona in there for a bit. To be honest, I went through the whole game without needing it, but it is here in case you want to give it a go. Once again, the compendium is here where you can register, store, and get personas that you want to use. Some of them from here does use yen, and the higher level, the more yen gets used, so keep watch on that when doing it, as you would be amazed with how fast yen can be drained in this. These features were here in the original, but Royal adds a few more, which makes fusions even better. Persona traits are here, and each persona gets one. The best part about these traits is, despite some being better than others, all of them are useful in some way, shape, or form. Some can be reducing certain element skills by a percentage, some can be baton pass related, or even strengthening physical skills. They went all out on these, and just like inheriting skills, you can pass on traits, and this means you can get a lot of powerful combinations. These traits also apply to teammates, so you'll get some amazing passive skills no matter what. Another new feature is the Velvet Room Fusion Alert where it goes all red. This means you can get boosts whenever doing any kind of fusion. An example is when doing normal fusions, you can get random skills which can be way stronger than normal. If you're not a fan of the skills, you can reset so you don't have to worry about keeping them. This kind of follows with the other fusion types, as in when the room is red, all the types have bonuses to them. If you fuse a persona and do it again when the alert is still on, this is guaranteed to get a fusion accent, so depending on luck, this could also work out well. The general thing with personas is to remember to have all the elements covered as much as possible, as fighting the demons can be tough without them. With the way fusions are in this game, you have endless amounts of combinations and ways to make a great team of personas. In Royal, we have a lot of other additions like the bonus boss fights. Some of them are hidden, don't worry, I'm not going to say what those are, but in the Velvet Room there are exclusive fights that you can do there. These are challenge fights, and with them there's a gimmick to it. If you meet the conditions set in the fights, you get points, and the more points, you get better rewards. Have no fear, if you lose these fights you can retry as many times as you want, as it doesn't give you a game over. The only complaint I have is that most of the fights are locked behind DLC, but at least the ones you get by default are good, especially the final one. Another new feature is the Thieves' Den. Throughout the game you get points, which you can use in order to have fun and mess around in the den, like checking out art, unlocking music to be played, and more. I like how you can even see achievements that you get in-game and see which ones you still need to get. There are other things that you can do in the den, but having a place like this is pretty cool. Just getting to roam around and hang out is awesome, and I hope that future Persona games have this, as it's nice to reflect on the game. It's not unlocked by default, so you will have to do some story progression, but once it is, you can go into the den anytime. The soundtrack for Persona 5 Royal is just amazing. I mean, Persona soundtracks are amazing in general, but here it follows the same pattern. Granted, most of the songs were in Persona 5, but the ones added in Royal fit well and don't feel out of place. The best part about the soundtrack is just how varied it is. It's clear that they got the atmosphere for all the themes in the game. Whether it's the battle themes like Takedown, which is really good by the way, 11 out of 10, or the palace themes when roaming, or heck, even going around in the day/nighttime when doing confidants and stat raising, those themes are good as well. Point is, the OST is amazing and I adore it so much. When I first played Persona 5 all those years ago, I knew I found a massive love for the JRPG genre. When I found out it was getting an expanded version with lots of quality of life changes and new story stuff, you knew I was very excited for it. During the time I was playing the game and making this video, the thought had come up, which was, is this the best Atlus game I have played? It's safe to say that without a shadow of a doubt, it is. With the improvements from the original and it being a great JRPG by itself, it hits a ton of amazing beats, and even though it's long, like on average 90 to 100 hours long, it's still fun to go through for the plot, characters, and that soundtrack. It elevated my love and a lot of people's love for the series, and I'm very glad it was a success. And who knows, maybe you can become a phenomenal Phantom Thief like me. With all of this, you could say the game stole my heart and it was well worth it. Just wanted to say thank you all for watching this review. This was a big project that I'm very proud to have completed. If you want updates on when new videos are coming out or any extra stuff, check out the socials in the description. Once again, thank you for watching and let us continue the game.